this is a work, it's a part of my PhD final work. It's about the conflict between Menger and the German historical school. I'm an Argentinian historian, so I'm here to the name of historian to apologize to Menger for our reaction. So first I want to say that the complexity of the theoretical divergences on the field of economics require an analysis that addresses internal heterogeneity. The Laudan's traditions of thought has complex and flexible entities allowed in the field of economics to analyze the theories and their configurations. In this sense, this work aims to offer some epistemological and theoretical elements to understand the Methodenstreit. The Laudan proposed conceptualizing supposed guiding principles, but these principles always in the right way? Let's see. When this assumption generates a degree of general acceptance, they are rarely abandoned in the face of the emergency of evidence or empirical observations that contradict them. That is, at the time of evaluating theories, the role of negative empirical evidence does not acquire a significantly relevance to it. Following Laudan's logic, the data will not be decided when providing a sufficient basis of unequivocal choices between sets of government assumptions. In the sense, the tensions between theory and empirical observations leads to a crisis where the normal science fights itself and stands still. It is worse, faced with the impossibility of providing philosophical solutions, the paradigm is abandoned and replaced by another that can solve the problem of object. This is called the scientific revolution. However, in the field of economic theories, the applicability of Kant's proposal has become somewhat difficult due to certain ambiguities around the concept of paradigm on the one hand and the emergency of economic sciences on another. In the production of economic theories, there is a group of authors who try to approach progress in economic science from the Kuhnian foundations. In a certain sense, their attempts were limited because of the modeling limitations of the functioning of the paradigm for the social and human sciences in general. However, post-empiricism's contribution to the history and philosophy of science acquire a considerable utility to time for elucidating the theoretical debate in a discipline as heterogeneous and complex economics. Laudan proposed the concept of reserved traditions. Traditions are constituted from the constitution of a group of specific theories that generate a certain metaphysical, epistemological, sociological, and methodological commitment.
Sorry to interrupt you. One moment, please. Sorry.
It's okay. The central element, its understanding, is that traditions have a longer life than theories and that they also suppose as a set of the things within them. On the other hand, the conception about the vision of reality represented throughout theories require a journal of postulates and evidence that have been formulated in a significant period. This point of contact that convergent values and principles will find the surface. In this way, the existence of theories within the tradition can be evaluated in terms of effectiveness they are required to solve problems. Specifically, the author maintains that these problems will acquire two edges. The first them is related to empirical evidence about some objects, and the second is framed in the conceptual difficulties that derive from certain contradiction of theory. Either is in internal sphere or in the debates between and other scientific principles. In the field of economic sciences, traditions of thought that are configured with greater acuity during the 19th century and that welcome the different theories of economic thought. I believe that three traditions of thought would share guiding assumptions: a national interventionist, a Marxian socialist, and a liberal. This tradition of thought have not been without controversy in their internal and external spheres. To a certain extent, the multiplicity of theories in the field of economics is related to the insufficient typically of problem-solving mechanisms and their correlate in the sociological commitments acquired. The stories of economic thought have emphasized the highlight in the inter-theoretical debate that is between theories of different thought tradition. But we have to research that intra-theoretical debates develop within in tradition. Of course, when faced with the evaluation of theory, the scope of the debate must be analyzed jointly since both shapes, by affinity and oppositions, the progress in the traditions. In the inter-theoretical field, the role played by tradition and their theories within the discipline undergo variations, above all because of internal tension of later. Generally, this is a certain preponderance of tradition of thought that, throughout one of its theories, generates and generalizes consensus in the discipline because of the real sociological commitment to ability to solve problems. And a favorable context and influence is not surprising that theory is raised that seeks to challenge the dominant theory for another tradition of thought. Within the tradition, on the other hand, we can see that many times tension of the own arise within the limits of the tradition, without the community of tradition being divided because of this difference. For its part, within the intra-theoretical debate, it is essential to show a large part of this tension are relating to empirical problems of a potential nature, that is, those that still await some type of solution and those presented as anomalous since they are not solved in a theory. Thus, when finding the most competitive theory in solving problems and therefore has a greater explanatory scope. In this sense, the supposed rules of tradition may partly distance themselves from their identity. Laudan distanced himself from the proposal of Hume and Lakatos regarding the persistence of a nucleus throughout the existence of paradigm of research programs. Certain variations in the identity of tradition will not mean its end or its abandonment, since it's difficult for it to remain constant and homogeneous in the long term. That is why the continuity of the nucleus is approximative, not absolute, allowing progress within the tradition. The Methodenstreit has been a process traditionally characterized as a dispute between Gustav von Schmoller and Carl Menger for the applicability of the inductive and deductive method, respectively, for the social sciences. This perspective of reduced scope has a strong projection in a group of authors who argue that the Methodenstreit is a dispute that only affects the method. In turn, within the recent productions, a group emerges that believes that the debate on the method was destined to the field of economics and, derivatively, other social sciences. Although there are productions that broaden the restricted perspective of the debate, above all analyzes in a contextual element, it is believed that it's necessary to problematize again the debate and discuss and redefine this scope. The debate between Schmoller, representative of the younger historical school of economics in Germany, and Carl Menger, founder of the Austrian School of Economics, did not only involve a debate on the method for the social sciences. I understand that the debate represents a profound convergence of many dimensions in political, economic, social, and philosophical matters. In this way, it is argued that the conflict can be understood throughout two moments in the logic of tradition of thought. On the one hand, the strictly methodological conflict between Schmoller and Carl Menger, and the other, an expansion of the dispute around the philosophical and theoretical debates about historical relativism, axiomatic regularities, social evolutionists, anthropological conceptions, theory of ethic and justice, and economic policy between Menger and the German historical school. These moments, on the other hand, are a manifestation of the theoretical and methodological disputes within the framework of opposing the tradition of thought. These tensions operate in two levels. On the one hand, in the reaction of the German historical a school to the postulates of the classical system of political economy, and on the other, particularly since the publication of Principles of Economics, with the debate between the younger German historical school and Menger. Ultimately, with the postulates of the liberal tradition in Austria, the German historicists saw their theoretical justification for Bismarck's Reich interventionism is danger. I borrow Janek Wasserman's concept of war of ideas from the Austrian school, particularly in its origins. Menger's feat is truly memorable. He conformed to a new theoretical system within the liberal tradition, and for this, he has to deal the postulate inside and outside his tradition. First, in an intra-theoretical debate with the British classical system and its impossibility to conduce a theoretical political economy, and second with the Methodenstreit, can be understood as the beginning of their intra-theoretical debate, and that is the first manifestation with the dispute between Menger and Schmoller, but it was the beginning of a long series of conflicts with other academic and theoretical mainstreams throughout the 20th century. In conclusion, the history and philosophy of science is a highly complex field of analysis, particularly due to the similar nature of the various disciplinary fields. In this sense, post-empirism has allowed throughout the sociology of knowledge possibilities to analyze complexity of economic sciences. Particularly in the discipline of political economy, three traditions of thought can be identified: a nationalist, a social Marxist, and a liberal. These traditions, depending on the context of production and the function, have a certain preponderance in the disciplinary fields without reaching an hegemonic place. In this way, the debate between the theories of different traditions, what was called inter-theoretical debates, was very useful to evaluate the basis of the same and put their identities to the test. On the other hand, within the traditions, different moments of a school of thought can also be visualized synchronously when evaluating the veracity of the theory within the same identity of thought. In this sense, this perspective of traditional thought can help us to reevaluate the Methodenstreit as a complex phenomenon that transcended the mere debate of methods. Being a dispute of traditions, Menger put the mainstreams inside and outside the liberal tradition in check with his brilliant work. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Corvalan. It was wonderful. And starting the time for questions and answers, I would like to ask if there are any questions from the public. Okay. Can I ask you something?
Yeah, of course.
We talk a lot about empiricists and theoretical approaches, the difference between Austrian and neoclassical schools in economics. But there's something that, I don't know, I keep in my mind that, is there any, we also talk about an economic free of values, no? Free of values and morality, just science. But can we talk about science, social science, when we make an interpretation of facts different from physical science? And without values, without morality, what's the place of morality in social science for you?
Well, particularly in the Methodenstreit, and particularly between the works of Schmoller and Menger, the morality and the ethical conception was a really important issue. Maybe that scopes of the debate are relegated because the author focused on the methodological conflict, but Menger, in one of the short production after the element of the social sciences in 1883, he discussed seriously about the ethical conception in political economy and the ethical conception from the German historical school that was, in the first sense, polemical.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we have passing the time, so thank you
you
so much. And now, we will, let me see the program here. We will have the presentation of Mrs. Natalia Conti and Mr. Daniel Pereira. I think just you are going to present, okay? They are from Cátedra Alberdi, another Argentinian, and is entitled Menger Arrives in Mendoza, the Psychological School of Economics.